So I created this course called Let's Build an ASP.NET Core MVC Web Application on .NET 5 a few years back. I've had a few requests to upgrade the application to .NET 9. This is the application that we build during the course. So in this video, that is exactly what we are going to do. In this video, you'll see that we can actually upgrade this application to .NET 9 without changing the existing code. All we actually need to do is make sure that .NET 9 is installed on our target PCs, and then within the project file that we can access by clicking on the project node from within Visual Studio like this, we simply change this setting here from .NET 5.0 to .NET 9.0. Then we can run the app through Visual Studio. Not everyone viewing this video will of course be familiar with this course, so I thought it would be a good idea to include instructions on how to download the app from GitHub and set it up on your development computer. This way you'll be able to see that the application can easily run on .NET 9. In which case, this proves that this course is very much relevant moving forward into 2025. The link to the full course has been included in the description of this video. All of the tools needed to create the application, for example Visual Studio and SQL Server, can be downloaded and used for free. The details of where you can download these technologies have been included below in the description of this video. The full course includes step-by-step instructions on how to build a real-world ASP.NET Core MVC web application and how to publish it to the cloud. If you like this video, please hit the like button and please consider subscribing to the channel. Please don't forget to ring the bell so that you'll be notified of future content. Please feel free to share this video with anyone you feel may benefit from its content. If you'd like to thank me by buying me a coffee, you can do this at my Buy Me a Coffee webpage at this URL. It will of course be greatly appreciated. It would be great if you followed me on X. My username is @GavinLontDigital. I love reading your comments, so please feel free to engage with me in the comments section. Your insights are always greatly appreciated. Before we go through the details of how to set up the ASP.NET Core MVC web application on our development computers and run it on .NET 9, I thought I'd start with a few clips from the original course, so those of you who aren't familiar with the course can get an idea of what the app and course is all about. For those of you who want to get right down to upgrading the app to .NET 9, you can just skip this section. In this video, I'll introduce you to an exciting new course entitled Let's Build an ASP.NET Core MVC Web Application on .NET 5. As the title suggests, the videos that will be released as part of this course will demonstrate the step-by-step creation of a real-world ASP.NET Core MVC Web Application built on .NET 5. The following technologies will be discussed and demonstrated in the context of a real-world ASP.NET Core MVC web application. C#, .NET 5, the MVC, Model View Controller Framework, Entity Framework Core, Link, SQL Server 2019, ASP.NET Core Identity, JavaScript, jQuery, Ajax, HTML5, Razor, Bootstrap version 4, CSS, Responsive Web Design, and Azure Cloud. We'll also look at UX, user experience, related topics, which includes responsive web design. So firstly, let's give this web application a real-world context. Let's look at the requirement we have been given to build this web application. I've created a fictional company that I've named TechTree. TechTree are a UK-based company that provides software engineering-related courses in various technologies. TechTree have several campuses located around the UK, and a learner can study with TechTree at any of their campuses, but a learner can also study remotely through their website. TechTree have hired us to write a web-based application where members of the public can register with the application and consume video and text-based content that is regularly published through the application by administration staff at TechTree. For TechTree, this web application is a great marketing tool for reaching members of the public and also provides an online remote learning facility to its members. We are first presented with the home page for this application, so all members of the public have access to this part of the web application. You can see we have our menu items at the top. These menu items provide links to the appropriate sections of the page. By clicking the Courses and Articles link, we are navigated to a section of the web page where we can see what content is available in terms of courses and articles provided by TechTree. When we click the Contact Us menu item, we are presented with a section of the web page where a facility for the user to email TechTree with any inquiries or questions is provided. When the user clicks the About Us menu option, the user is presented with the About Us section, which simply contains a blurb about the company, TechTree. Then at the bottom, you can see a simple footer containing links to relevant social media URLs. So you can see icons that represent Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, and YouTube. So let's look at the various ways that the user can access the registration dialog box, which obviously provides a user with a facility to register with the application. We have a register button in the center of the Hero section here. We can also access the register dialog from this top right-hand menu option. And when the user clicks one of the cards presented in the Courses and Articles section, the user is also presented with the register dialog. Although TechTree provides its content for free through this web application, the user needs to register the user's relevant information with the application in order to consume TechTree's free content. Something slightly different happens when a user registers by clicking one of the cards. We'll discuss what happens when the user registers by clicking one of the cards presented in this section of the homepage a bit later. So in terms of security regarding this web application, there are 3 levels of security. A user can be a member of the public, in which case the user will only have access to the content on the home page. A user can register through the registration dialog, and a registered user is regarded as a member of the web application and will be able to consume the free content in the form of courses and articles provided by TechTree. The 3rd level of security is an administrator. The administrator works directly for TechTree and can update the content provided through the web application. During this course, we'll create the necessary CRUD, Create, Read, Update, Delete functionality that the administrator will use to add or remove content and metadata from the system. You'll see how the MVC design pattern is implemented and separates concerns, i.e. models, views, and controllers. I have already created an admin account. So let's log on to the application as an administrator. From a technical perspective, how is an admin user different from any other user of the application? I have created an admin role in the relevant database table, provided through the ASP.NET Core Identity technology. We'll discuss how security is facilitated through the implementation of a technology called Identity later on at an appropriate time during this course. Notice how the menu at the top has changed since we logged in with the admin account. We now have 3 menu options available to us: Home on the left, we have the Logout menu option on the right. We also have a new drop-down menu labeled Admin, which has appeared next to the Home menu option. If we click the Admin menu option, we are presented with a drop-down list of sub-menu options. So let's start by clicking on the first item in the drop-down list marked Categories. So here we are presented with a list of categories that have been added to the system and are stored in the relevant database table. You may recognize the text in the list under the title and description headings. This data was presented on the appropriate cards in the Courses and Articles section of the publicly available home page. Each category corresponds to one of the cards presented in the Courses and Articles section on the home page. So in this application, note that we are generically referring to a group of content items as category. Each category contains a list of category items. In the context of the relational database design for this application, the category table, used for storing categories, has a one-to-many relationship with the category item table used to store category items. The category item table is used for the storage of metadata regarding each item of content, which are contained within a particular category. The content itself is stored in its own database table, appropriately named content. The content item table is used to store data about its corresponding content, i.e., the metadata for a particular item of content, and has a one-to-one relationship with the content table. So here we have a list of categories. You can see that the data for each category in the list has a group of buttons positioned to the right of the category data. The first button from the left allows us to edit the data for the relevant category. So if we click on this button, you can see that we are able to edit the data for an existing category. We can click the Save button to save any modifications we have made to the category data, or we can click the Back to List button to navigate back to the list of categories. By clicking the second button from the left, we are presented with a read-only display of the relevant category's data. By clicking the third button from the left, we are presented with a page presenting us with a read-only view of the relevant category's data, but we are also presented with a prompt asking us if we are sure that we want to delete the relevant item. We have a red delete button on this page that we can press to confirm the relevant deletion operation. So these buttons and associated views provide the user with an interface to facilitate relevant CRUD operations, create, read, update, delete operations for our category data. We'll look at how to implement these CRUD operations in code during this course and how the MVC framework facilitates a separation of concerns. So here we have a button marked Update Items. If we click one of these buttons, we will be presented with a list of category items related to the relevant category. The items presented in this list are members of the category that we selected from our list of categories by clicking the relevant Update Items button. So if we click the button labeled Add Content next to the category item that has the title Introduction to C#, we are presented with a view where we are able to add the content for the Introduction to C# category item. So firstly, let's provide an appropriate title in the title field. So let's type in Introduction to C#. This text will appear as the heading for this content item. Below this, we have a text area field, i.e. a field where we are able to provide more than one line of text for the appropriate field. This field is labeled HTML content. So the last field allows us to enter a YouTube video link. For this example, I'm going to embed an appropriate video from the Gavin Lon channel. So if we navigate to the Introduction to C# video, we can right-click the video screen and select Copy Embed Code, like this. Let's paste the code into a text editor. We only need the URL for this text. Note that the URL must contain the word embed rather than the word watch in order to embed the YouTube video within the appropriate web page. Right, so let's save this content. Great! So we have been automatically navigated back to the list of category items. So we have experienced the application from a non-registered user's perspective. We have also experienced the application from an administrator's perspective. So let's look at the application from the perspective of a user who has successfully registered to become a member of the TechTree web application. So, to do this, let's first register a fictional person named Bob Jones. Let's click the menu item labeled Register. So let's click the Register button, and you can see that Bob Jones is now a registered member of the TechTree web application. So in order to consume any content, we need to first choose the courses and articles that we want to consume. So to do this, we need to click the Choose Courses and Articles button. You can see that we are now presented with a list of categories that we added to the system when we were logged on with the admin account. So from a member's perspective, we can now choose the content we wish to consume by checking or unchecking the appropriate categories. So let's check the checkbox next to C# for beginners And let's also check the checkbox next to Advanced C#. Let's click the Save button to save these categories to Bob's profile. Now we are presented with a collapsible list containing the appropriate categories as the headings. When we click the heading for the category in which we are interested, the category items belonging to the relevant category are presented to us. We can also collapse the category items in which we are currently not interested and show the items in which we are currently interested. So we are able to add and remove categories from our profile by clicking the Choose Courses and Articles button and then checking or unchecking the appropriate checkboxes, positioned to the left of the relevant category title. Let's play with this functionality a little bit. Great. So let's click on the category item with the title Introduction to C#. And look at that. We now are presented with the content for the Introduction to C# category item. We can see our rendered HTML content that the administrator entered for the HTML content field displayed at the top of the page just below the title field the administrator entered for this content. We can also see the appropriate video that is positioned just below the rendered HTML content is automatically played. Great! Basic C#.NET application in order to get acquainted with the language. This facility allows an administrator to add a category for a user or delete a category for a user through this user interface. So let's add Azure Cloud to the profile of Sarah Hardy and Bob Jones. So to do this, let's check the appropriate checkboxes next to their names. Let's click the Save button. Let's add Advanced C# to Sarah Hardy's profile. Let's remove C# for Beginners from Sarah Hardy's profile. When we click the Save button, behind the scenes, the inputted data is sent to the server through an asynchronous process. So join me as I go through the creation process of this ASP.NET Core MVC web application that we are going to create for TechTree. Right, let's go through the instructions of how to set up the ASP.NET Core MVC web application to run on .NET 9. So let's get started with the first step, which is just making sure that we have .NET 5 installed on our local machines. Once we have the application running on .NET 5, we can then upgrade the application to run on .NET 9. And you'll see that we won't have to change any of the code in order to accomplish this. Before we upgrade the project to .NET 9, let's first get the code running on .NET 5. The code was of course originally created and tested on .NET 5. So let's firstly get the application running on .NET 5, and once we have tested the application and are happy that it is working correctly, we can upgrade our local machines to .NET 9. We can then test to see if the project can run on .NET 9. So let's firstly make sure that we have .NET 5 installed on our local machines. If you have .NET 9 already installed, you can skip this section. Please note that we can check the versions of .NET that we currently have running on our machines by typing .NET --info like that. Note that you can actually run multiple versions of .NET side by side. So you can have .NET 9 and .NET 5 installed on your machine and alternate between the versions of .NET through Visual Studio for a particular project. So if it turns out that you don't have .NET 5 installed, you can just navigate to this URL. I've also included this link below in the description of this video. You can see that we have a tiny link marked all .NET versions here. So let's click that link. Great, and then it's just a case of pressing this arrow next to the text that states out of support versions like this. And then click this link and we can install the appropriate version. When I say the appropriate version, I mean appropriate to the platform that you're running on your target machine. So I've got a Windows 11 operating system running and it's a 64-bit machine. So I will click on this one to download and install .NET 5. I've already installed .NET 5 on my machine, so I'm not going to go through with this. But if you haven't yet got .NET 5 installed, please go ahead and do this. Bear in mind that if you have later versions of .NET installed, this won't interfere with your later versions of .NET. So you don't have to worry about that. So the next step is to download the ASP.NET Core Web Application project files from GitHub to our development machines. So to do this, let's first navigate to the relevant GitHub repository that contains the relevant code files for the tech tree ASP.NET Core MVC Web Application. So let's navigate to this URL. This link has been included below in the description of this video. So to download the project files, we can simply click on this green button here, which is marked with the code text. So we just click this arrow here, and then we click the download zip menu option here. Okay, and it should now put all the relevant files within our downloads folder, and you can, of course, track the progress here. Okay, great. So that's downloaded successfully. So let's go into the folder by clicking this icon here. And let's double click that and that. And now this is the root folder for our project. And you can see that because we have the tech tree MVC Web Application.sln file within the root of this project. So what we want to do is make sure that we have a designated folder on our local machines where we can actually perform our development. So let's make sure that we do that. So within my C drive, I've actually created a folder called Web Dev, which is where I'll be doing all my web development work. So let's copy all the files and folders that we've just downloaded and paste it into our working folder here. Please note that in order to benefit from the features shipped with .NET 9, you'll need to install Visual Studio 2022 version 17.12 or higher. You can download the appropriate Community Edition version of Visual Studio for free from this URL. It is important to note that the Community Edition is the free version of Visual Studio. Okay, so now that we've definitely got the right version of Visual Studio installed, let's actually fire up the tech tree MVC Web Application. So you could just double click on the relevant SLN file, the solution file. Let's click Trust and Continue here. Excellent, and our application has launched successfully. So the other way that you can make sure that your version of Visual Studio is the latest version is to go to the Help menu here and go check for updates like this. Excellent, and you can see that I'm up to date. Visual Studio Community 2022, 17.13. So mine's actually a preview edition. You don't need the preview edition, but just as long as you're up to date with Visual Studio Community Edition, you'll be able to benefit from the newly released features in .NET 9. Excellent. This ASP.NET Core MVC project uses SQL Server as the backend storage facility. The MVC Web Application uses code-first migrations to generate the SQL Server database and SQL Server tables. We'll generate and run the relevant EF Core migration in order to create our database in just a bit. But firstly, we need to make sure that we have installed SQL Server and SQL Server Management Studio. SQL Server Management Studio, or SSMS, provides us with the means to view, update, and manage our data stored within SQL Server through the use of a UI. So if you haven't installed a version of SQL Server or SQL Server Management Studio, you can navigate to this URL to do so. Note that we can download this software for free. So to download and install the free version of SQL Server, we simply click on this button here, Download Now. Now I've gone through this process already, so I won't go through it now. But all you need to do is hit the download button and then follow the instructions and install the software. And then to install SSMS or SQL Server Management Studio, you'll want to click this link here and also do the same. Follow the instructions until you have successfully installed the software. So once you've downloaded the relevant install executable, find the file within your downloads folder, double-click on it, and follow the instructions until you have completed the relevant installation. So do this for both SQL Server and SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio. So let's go into Visual Studio. And the first thing we want to do before we generate the relevant migration and then run it to generate our SQL Server database and the relevant tables, we need to make sure that our connection string is correct. And the first setting we need to adjust is the server setting, because we want it to point to the correct instance of SQL Server. So your server setting is going to be different to mine. So in order to verify your particular server name, you can go to SSMS or SQL Server Management Studio. Right, when you fire it up, you'll be presented with a dialog. And here it is. Here's our dialog box, connect to server. And then the setting that we want, the text value that we want, is this one here, which comes after the last backslash. So let's copy this text to our clipboards. We can actually connect. Let's just connect here also, because we're going to, once we've run our migration, we're going to want to verify that our database has been appropriately created. Let's minimize that. Let's go back to Visual Studio and let's paste what we've got now, clipboards, over this server setting here. And we also want to precede this with 2 backslashes and precede the 2 backslashes with local host, like this. And then the other thing we want to do is include another setting. This is just for security reasons. I won't go through the details of the security reasons, but we want to include a setting called Trust Server Certificate, and we want to set this value to true, like this. Great, and our connection string should be good. So we're ready to create our migration and run it to create our database and SQL Server database tables within that database. Okay, so to create our database and the relevant SQL Server tables, we go to Tools, not SQL Server. We go to NuGet Package Manager and then Package Manager Console to launch the relevant window. And to generate our migration class, we go add dash migration and then give it a sensible name. So I'm going to call my migration initial create, press the enter key, and it should generate the appropriate code that we want in order to create the SQL Server database and relevant tables within that database. Excellent. So that looks like it is executed successfully. And you can see here we have a class called initial create, which inherits from the migration class, which is a class that exists within the Microsoft Identity Framework Core Migrations namespace. So this is how we can essentially communicate with EF Core. So EF Core knows to run this up method to create the relevant changes we want. And then if we want to undo the effects of the up method, we can run the down method through a specific command. But we won't go into how to roll back the effects. So here we have an up method, which will essentially create the changes that we want. So in this case, we're generating the database within SQL Server, and it's creating the relevant tables for us. And then the down method can be run to undo the effects created by the up method. Okay, perfect. So we want to run the up method. So to do this, the next command we run is update dash database, like this. Press the enter key. Build succeeded. That's looking good so far. No horrible red text. So looks like our database and database tables have been created. Great. So if we now minimize this and go into SQL Server Management Studio here, and then we just refresh our UI, go into databases, we have our tech tree database created and the relevant tables. And you'll notice here, because, and just a word about how EF Core knows to create the relevant tables? It's because we have configured certain C# classes to serve as templates for the tables that we want created in our database. So if you look here, we have the category C# class, we have the category item C# class, media type, etc. And if we go to entities here, you can actually see those classes and all of these attributes, for example, indicate to EF Core how we want the tables to be created. Do we want foreign key constraints created, etc. Excellent. And then if we go back to the application DB context class here, you can see that the application DB context class inherits from identity DB context. And because we are doing that, EF Core knows to create various authentication and authorization tables for us. So if we go back to TechTree, you can see here we've got ASP.NET role claims, for example, ASP.NET roles, ASP.NET user claims, ASP.NET users. These are all generated for us. We haven't, in other words, we haven't created C# classes for this purpose. Because our application DB context class is inheriting from our identity DB context, we are essentially telling EF Core, as it were, to generate those authorization and authentication tables. Okay, excellent. Right, so we can actually run our application now. And let's see if we've got everything working, basically, just so it runs on .NET 5. Excellent. Okay, that's great. So we've got our application now running. Our MVC application now is running on .NET 5. So that's excellent. But if we look at the courses section, we can see we don't have any data in our database. So we can't really test any of the functionality of the application at the moment. So I've actually created a SQL script that we can run that will automatically add about 8 courses into the database so that we can look at some of the functionality before we go on to install .NET 9. Okay, so let's go to SQL scripts folder here, and we have a file named addcourses.sql. Let's double click on this file node here. Excellent. And let's select all of the content within this file and copy it to our clip. Whoops. Let's select all the content in this file and copy it to our clipboards. Let's go to SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio here. And with the TechTree database node selected, let's go to New Query here. And let's copy the contents from our clipboards into this file. Excellent. Or into this window. And then we can just run this and it will add the relevant courses and course items into the database. So let's click the execute button. Excellent. There's no horrible red text, so that looks like it executed correctly. And now if we run the application, let's go back to Visual Studio, and if we run the application now, we should have some courses to work with. Let's go to the courses section, and there it is. So we've got C# for beginners, advanced C#, Azure, full stack development. So we've got some default data there that we can play around with. So now if we click, for example, the C# for beginners course, and we register our information, so gavinlond@gmail.com. So we need a valid email address for the username. Just choose a password. Right, name. I'm just going to put address 1. There's not very much validation on these particular fields here. There is, however, validation on the postcode. So it needs to be a valid UK postcode. So I'm just going to put 19. This is just a made-up address, but it does conform to a valid UK postcode and also number. So it just needs to be a valid format for a UK phone number. So that should work. And then we must check this checkbox here. Oops, it doesn't like that there. Okay, too many numbers for the phone number. Great, and then we can just click that there. I accept the terms of use and privacy policy, and then click register. Great, and it logs us on automatically. You can see, hello Gavin, great. So we're logged on, and the C# for Beginners course has automatically been added to our profile, which means we can go through the course content, which are simply 3 videos at the moment. So that data we ran earlier on, that query we ran to add the relevant data to the database, just has 3 items for the course C# for Beginners available. So if we click, for example, Introduction to C#, it runs a video. And at the moment, the video is just set to me playing with a lightsaber. But you can, of course, set the video to link to any video you like. For example, an actual C# for Beginners introduction video, for example, or database, or a video on data types, for example. But at the moment, this is just dummy data. So all the videos are set to me playing with a lightsaber. And the reason for that is I recently did a course for Free Code Camp teaching the basics of DaVinci Resolve, which is video editing software. And one of the things that I teach is how to create the lightsaber effect. This video was created while I was researching how to create the effect. Okay, cool. Right, enough of lightsabers. And we can actually now choose from the 8 courses that are available to us and add them to our profile, which means they'll be available on our profile and we'll be able to go through the course content. Excellent. And there we go. So now that we have got the application working on .NET 5, let's make sure that we have .NET 9 installed on our development machines. To check whether you have .NET 9 installed, you can type .NET -- version like this. So let's launch the command prompt and type .NET -- version like this. And you can see here, I've clearly got .NET 9 installed on my machine. And if you want to see what other versions of .NET you have installed on your computer, you can type .NET -- info like that. Press the enter key. Excellent. If you installed the latest version of Visual Studio 2022, which was covered in an earlier step, you should have .NET 9 already installed on your machine. But if you don't yet have .NET 9 installed, you can navigate to this URL and simply press the download button here to download it for your platform. So I'm running Windows 11 on a 64-bit machine. So if I press this button and follow the instructions, I can install .NET 9, which is appropriate to my particular platform. Okay. I'm not going to go through with that because, as you've seen, I've already got .NET 9 installed. So the next thing is, from within Visual Studio, let's just fire up Visual Studio, open the tech tree web application within Visual Studio. Okay, I'm just going to get rid of some of this. Then if you double click on the TechTree MVC Web Application project node here from within Visual Studio, you can see that the target framework is set to .NET 5.0, which means this application is currently running on .NET 5. Now that we've got .NET 9 installed, we can simply change this to .NET 9, and our application will now run on .NET 9. So let's press the play button and see what happens. Excellent. So that has worked perfectly, and we have our courses listed here. So we are now running our web application on .NET 9. So you can see that we changed no code whatsoever, no code logic, in order to get this working on .NET 9. So the upgrade is 100% smooth and it works perfectly. So let's log into the system. with the credentials that we registered earlier on. And let's log in. Excellent. And you can see the courses that we added to our profile previously when we were actually running it on .NET 5 are still there, and we can access the various course items and go through the course. Okay, so we can of course now change the links for these course items contained within the relevant courses. But in order to do that, in order to perform CRUD operations, we need to log on as administrator, but we haven't yet added an administrator account to the system. So we need to add an administrator role and an administrator account to the system in order for us to log on as an admin user and perform the relevant CRUD operations, which involves adding and updating the various course information in the system. So I'm just going to log out here. Let's go back to Visual Studio and I'll show you how we can add an admin account to the system. And because we're up to date with our migrations, in other words, we've run all the relevant migrations by using the update-database command, when we generate a migration, it's just going to generate a blank migration, if you like. So the up method and the down method will be blank, and we're going to manually add the code to the relevant methods. Luckily for us, I've already created the code, so we're just going to be copying and pasting the relevant code to our blank migration. So to add our migration, we go add-migration here, and let's just call this admin. Press the enter key. Build started, build succeeded. Excellent, and we have our blank migration, as it were. So now we're just going to build up the code step by step. So to do that, we go to code snippets here. All of this pre-created code would have been downloaded when you downloaded the code from GitHub. So you also have access to this code. So if I go to code snippets here, click on that file node there, we have all the relevant code presented to us here. First thing we want to do is add these GUIDs, which will be stored as const strings. Okay, so let's just select those, copy there. And then let's go to our blank migration and paste it here. Excellent. So we don't want to use these particular GUIDs. We want to generate our own unique GUIDs. So that's the next step. And it's very simple to do. We can just go into our web browsers and we go to a website called GUIDgenerator.com, GUIDgenerator.com, press enter. Great, and then we want to generate two GUIDs, so we update this field here from 1 to 2, and then we just press the Generate Some GUIDs button. And there we go. Those are our GUIDs, and we can copy these two GUIDs to our clipboard by pressing this button here, and then we can go back to Visual Studio, and let's just paste them down here. I'll comment them out, and all we're going to do now is take this top GUID here and replace the GUID currently assigned to admin user GUID like this, and do the same for the other GUID. So now we have our string constants set to freshly created GUIDs. And let's remove that. Excellent. So the next step is we want to fill in the up method with the relevant code logic. So let's go back here and let's just copy the code from the up method from within the add admin account underscore migration underscore code underscore snippets.txt file. So we copy that to our clipboards, go back to our blank migration and fill in the code for the up method. And you can see here that we're using a password hasher class to hash the password that we've chosen here for the admin account so that it is protected. It will be encrypted within the database. So you might want to choose a different password here. I've just chosen password 100 exclamation mark. This is just for development purposes. Of course, we're just upgrading the system to .NET 9 and testing it. So I would recommend just sticking with this password. Another thing I'd like to mention is, of course, you wouldn't want to expose passwords like this within your code. You would want to save it as a secret. Secrets are beyond the scope of this particular video, but this is something we can look at in a later video. Great, and you might want to change the email address, but I would recommend just keeping that email address to what it is here in the code, because all we're doing is testing this application on .NET 9. So this is not so important at this particular time. So the next step is to update the down method. And it's the same process. We go to our code snippet here, and we copy this code and paste it within the down method. And of course, the down method basically rolls back the database to what it was before the up method was run. Excellent. So now that we've got our migration created, all we do, it's the same procedure as we did previously. We launch the package manager console window and we type update database like this and press the enter key. And that should add an admin role to the system as well as an admin account. And as you've seen, our credentials will be for the password 100 with the P capitalized, exclamation mark, and the email address is admin@techtree.co.uk. So let's see if we can now log on to the system with those credentials. Okay, let's play the application interactively through Visual Studio. And let's see if we can log on as admin. And let's enter our admin credentials. Okay, click login. Okay, invalid login attempt. Okay, I might have got the password wrong. Okay, so let's try and enter the correct password. I must have entered an incorrect password. And let's try to log in as admin. Excellent. So that worked. Our migration worked. We now have the admin menu available to us. So we can now perform the relevant CRUD operations. Categories denotes a course. So if we go to categories, you can see all of our courses here. C# for beginners, advanced C#, Azure. And then to update the items in the course, for example, introduction to C#, C# data types, we can, as you saw there, so if we're in categories, we can click the update items next to the relevant course, and we can, through these buttons here, we can edit the various information pertaining to the relevant course items. We can actually delete a course item if we so choose. We can edit the content, and this is where you would update the video link, which is currently set to me playing around with a Jedi sword, so we don't want to change that. And so we can perform the relevant CRUD operations. We can even create a new course item here if we so choose, and you can perform the CRUD operations within the system because you're now an administrator. So please check out the full course to get all the relevant details regarding how to set up these CRUD operations for an administrator user. And you can go to users to category, and because you're an admin, we can go to the relevant courses, and you can see how we've only got 2 users in the system at the moment. And you can see that Gavin has been assigned the C# for beginners course already, so we don't have to do that, but we could uncheck that box, and then that course would no longer be available to Gavin. So let's keep that checked. And if we go to advanced C# here, this course is not currently available to Gavin. So let's actually assign that to Gavin. Okay. Great. Data has been saved successfully. So Gavin now will be able to see the advanced C# course when Gavin logs onto the system. And let's do the same for Azure. Great. Let's assign that to Gavin. And for good measure, let's also assign SQL Server for Beginners to Gavin. Excellent. And let's save that. As I say, all the details of how to create this is available within the full course. The link to the full course has been included below in the description. Right, so if we log out now and we log in with Gavin's credentials, we've got all these new courses that have been assigned to Gavin. SQL Server for Beginners, Azure, Advanced C#. And now Gavin can go through the various videos pertaining to the course items in the relevant courses. Excellent. Great. So the system is clearly working on .NET 9. We've upgraded it to .NET 9 without having to change any of the code logic, which is what I set out to accomplish at the beginning of this video. So that's excellent. So we're not out of the woods yet. If we look here, if we look at our dependencies, so we right-click the dependencies node, and you can see there's already a warning icon placed within the dependencies node here. So if we right-click here and we go to Manage NuGet Packages, and we're on the Installed tab here. So here are all the installed dependencies. And you can see here we've got a warning icon within each of the relevant dependency items. So it's prompting us to upgrade version 5 to version 9 for each of these dependencies. So all we do is we press this button here next to each of the dependencies to upgrade each of the dependencies from version 5 to version 9. Excellent. So that's upgraded it to version 9. So the Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.Diagnostics.EntityFramework Core package has been upgraded to version 9, which is what we wanted. And all we do is we go down the list and we press this button next to each of the dependency items in order to upgrade all of the dependencies from version 5 to version 9. Okay, so all of our dependencies are now upgraded to the latest stable release of each of our dependencies. So that is excellent. And let's see if we can still run our application. Hopefully we haven't broken anything by doing that. I don't think we have. Excellent. Here we go. That looks good. So no errors. We're looking good. Let's further our testing by logging on as admin. Hopefully we'll get the password right first time this time. Oh, and we have. Look at that. And we have access to the various CRUD operations we might want to perform against all of our courses that are available in the system. So we might want to create a new course, for example, but we won't do it here. For all the details about this, as I keep saying, click on the link that is included below in the description and go through the full course. I'm very proud of this MVC course. It is definitely relevant for 2025 and beyond. So if you want to learn how to create real-world applications using the ASP.NET Core MVC framework, this is an excellent course to go through. Great. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you'll go through the Let's Build an ASP.NET Core MVC Web Application on .NET 5 course. But of course, the on .NET 5 part is now irrelevant, as we have just proved that it runs perfectly on .NET 9. So the C# code that was initially created on .NET 5 will still work on .NET 9. All you have to do is download the code from GitHub and change the version within the project file through the Visual Studio Solution Explorer window, like we did earlier. If you like this video, please hit that like button and please consider subscribing to the channel. Please don't forget to ring the bell so that you'll be notified of future content. Please feel free to share this video with anyone you feel may benefit from its content. If you'd like to thank me by buying me a coffee, you can do this at my Buy Me a Coffee webpage at this URL. It will, of course, be greatly appreciated. It would be great if you followed me on X. My username is @GavinLonDigital. I love reading your comments, so please feel free to engage with me in the comments section. Your insights are always greatly appreciated. I hope to see you soon. Thank you, and take care.